In the cold void of space, an alien ship drifts silently, carrying a secret no one should ever find. Inside a sack, a tiny baby lies abandoned, left to die. But then, through the stillness, a faint voice whispers, "Daddy," a human hears it. What happens next will change everything you thought you knew about humanity. This is a story of survival, courage, and the bond that not even the stars can break. The void of space stretched endlessly, a black canvas flecked with distant stars, indifferent to the lives it consumed. Most vessels that drifted here were abandoned relics, or ships lost to the greed of explorers seeking fortune. But this vessel, this one was different. Its sleek, angular body, glinting faintly under the distant light of a dying sun, carried a secret it had hoped would never be discovered. Inside the cargo hold, an object lay crumpled in a sack, barely larger than a human infant. Its tiny limbs curled instinctively, even though it had no one to curl them around. The sack itself was woven from an alien material that was both flexible and unyielding, capable of sustaining minimal life support, but not enough to keep a child alive for long. Whoever, or whatever, had left it here had calculated that no one would ever find it. They had left the baby to die. Outside, the hum of the ship's systems was faint, almost ceremonial in its silence. The aliens responsible for this act were not monsters in the human sense. They operated by a different logic, one that prioritized efficiency over empathy, experimentation over morality. To them, the infant was a variable in a calculation, a test to see if a species so fragile could survive in conditions they had never encountered. And yet, there was something human about life that defied even the most rigid equations. Even in the cold, sterile environment of the cargo hold, the baby stirred. A tiny hand clawed at the sack's lining, searching for warmth it would never find. Its eyes, too young to see beyond blurred shadows, flickered beneath the thin membrane of its eyelids. On a research station orbiting the gas giant Salus, Commander Elias Arden monitored the sector through the long-range sensors. His ship, the Resolute, had been dispatched to survey potential energy anomalies in this quadrant, anomalies that had recently appeared in reports from automated probes. Space was his home, and solitude was a companion he knew well. Yet the readings on his monitor tonight made him pause. A small, irregular energy spike, weak, fleeting, pulsed in a section of unclaimed space. The signal was almost imperceptible, like a whisper barely reaching a human ear. Most would have ignored it. Elias, however, had learned long ago that the universe rarely whispered for no reason. He adjusted the ship's sensors, focusing on the anomaly. The readings intensified briefly, then faded, as if whatever was generating them was fragile and frightened. His brow furrowed. "What the hell?" he muttered, leaning closer. He ran a detailed scan, cross-referencing against all known ship signatures in the sector. Nothing matched. The signal was not from any registered vessel, nor any known life form. Yet there was a pattern in the pulse, a rhythmic cadence that suggested intelligence. Elias activated the long-range thrusters, setting a course toward the source. He had no idea what awaited him, only that leaving it unexplored would go against every instinct he possessed. The journey took 2 hours, silent except for the gentle vibration of the engines and the distant hum of the ship's life systems. When he arrived, the sight that greeted him was perplexing. A derelict ship floated silently, seemingly abandoned. Its hull was marked with strange, alien symbols that glowed faintly in the reflection of Salus's distant sun. It looked like a predator in wait, yet eerily dormant. Elias suited up and boarded the alien vessel with careful precision, every step measured, every motion deliberate. The corridors were narrow, metallic, and almost organic in design, the walls seeming to pulse faintly under his hand. He followed the faint life signs, which grew weaker the closer he approached the cargo hold. And then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it, the whisper of a voice. Human, unmistakably human. "Daddy!" The word pierced through his focus, slow and fragile, trembling with fear and hope at once. Elias froze, scanning the area. No one was there, at least no adult. The sound came again, louder this time, though still a mere breath against the vast emptiness of the alien vessel. "Daddy!" He rounded the corner and saw the sack. It quivered slightly, as if something small inside was moving with the force of life itself. Heart pounding, he approached cautiously. The alien weave of the sack was unfamiliar, yet he could see the tiny outline of a child through the thin material. With hands steady despite the surge of adrenaline, he opened the sack. The infant inside was fragile to the point of seeming unreal, barely breathing, with large, dark eyes staring up at him. For a moment, time seemed to halt. The universe outside the ship, the endless cold of space, all faded. There was only this child, abandoned and trembling, and him. Elias carefully lifted the baby into his arms. It whimpered, weakly at first, then settled slightly, clinging instinctively to the warmth of his body. He checked for life signs. They were faint, barely registering on his instruments. But they were there. He whispered to the child softly, unsure why his human instincts compelled him to speak. "I've got you. You're safe now." The infant's tiny fingers clutched at his suit. That single instinctive act, a desperate grasp at life, was all the proof Elias needed. Whoever had left this child to die had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. This child, though barely alive, would not surrender. Back on the Resolute, the medical team had been alerted. The child was placed in an emergency life support pod, its vitals stabilized with delicate precision. But even as the doctors worked, Elias could not shake the thought that this was no ordinary human infant. Its resilience, even in the face of near-certain death, suggested something extraordinary. He sat by the pod, eyes fixed on the tiny figure inside. The whispers had stopped, but the child's gaze followed him, unnervingly aware despite its weakness. The pods on the station were designed to shield, to heal, to protect, yet nothing in human engineering could explain the intensity of life force emanating from this small body. Elias knew that the events unfolding were only the beginning. The aliens had left this child to die, but in doing so, they had set in motion a chain of events they could never have predicted. Humanity had been underestimated, and this child, this fragile, abandoned being, was proof. Proof that even when left alone in the void, humans had a spark that refused to be extinguished. He made a decision. The child would be his responsibility. Its survival was no longer a matter of chance, it was a matter of choice, of will. He would raise it, protect it, and uncover the reasons why it had been left in such a fate. And perhaps, in doing so, he would come to understand the vastness of what it meant to be human. For now, though, all he could do was watch and wait, and marvel at the tiny voice that had called him Daddy. In the quiet of the medical bay, surrounded by humming machines and the endless dark outside, he realized something profound. Humans are not merely survivors, they are extraordinary. And even in the face of alien indifference, life insists on fighting back. Somewhere in the depths of space, the aliens had made a calculation. They had left a child to die. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. And humanity was about to prove that no calculation, no matter how precise, could ever account for the force of hope, courage, and love. The medical bay hummed with quiet urgency as Commander Elias Arden monitored the fragile life before him. The infant remained in the life support pod, but even the most advanced human technology seemed inadequate to sustain it fully. Its heartbeat was erratic, the breathing shallow, as though the universe itself had conspired to test the limits of life. And yet, despite every reason to succumb, the child clung stubbornly to existence. Days passed in a haze of monitoring, scans, and delicate interventions. The medical team rotated shifts, each technician stunned by the resilience of this tiny human. Nothing in their training had prepared them for a life form so determined to survive. Elias, however, refused to leave the pod. He watched every twitch, every flicker of consciousness, as if his presence alone could anchor the child to life. And then the impossible began to happen. On the fourth day, the baby's eyes opened fully, revealing deep, intelligent pupils that seemed far beyond its age. It gazed at Elias as though recognizing him not merely as a caretaker, but as someone who had intervened in destiny itself. The whispers returned, soft and fragmented. "Daddy hot," the infant murmured, a vague reference to the warmth it craved. Elias leaned closer. "I'm here. You're safe now. You're going to live." The child's tiny hand reached out and grasped his finger with surprising strength. It was almost unnatural, the force in such fragile limbs. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine, the unmistakable sense that this being, so small, so defenseless, was extraordinary. Within the week, the infant began exhibiting signs that defied human biology. It healed from minor scratches within hours, its skin smoothing over like a living membrane with accelerated repair. The medical team, initially cautious, soon watched in disbelief as scans revealed cells dividing at rates far faster than normal human physiology allowed. "It's evolving," muttered Dr. Lila Harkin, the chief medical officer, unable to conceal her awe. "I've never seen anything like this. The infant's regenerative process is instantaneous. We may be witnessing the next stage of human adaptation, or something entirely new." Elias felt a mixture of pride and dread. Whatever had been left to die was not just surviving, it was transcending the limits of life itself. But why? And what had the aliens hoped to achieve by abandoning it? As the infant grew, both physically and cognitively, anomalies continued to appear. By the time it reached the equivalent of a 3-year-old in appearance, it could understand speech, respond with complex gestures, and even anticipate actions. It was in every sense human, but sharper, faster, more perceptive. Elias began calling the child Kale. The name felt right, a sound that resonated with the small, defiant life in his arms. Every day, Kale grew stronger, smarter, and most unnervingly, increasingly aware of the universe beyond the walls of the station. It would gaze through the viewport for hours, following distant ships and celestial bodies as if memorizing the stars themselves. One night, as the station orbited the pale blue of Salus, Kale whispered from the pod, "Why left alone?" Elias paused. The question, so simple and yet profound, struck him deeply. He knelt beside the pod, studying the child's intelligent gaze. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I promise you'll never be alone again." Kale's fingers brushed against the pod's edge, tracing the alien symbols etched into the exterior of the derelict ship's components that had been brought aboard for study. "They watch?" the child asked, voice barely audible. Elias froze. Could Kale sense the aliens? Was it merely intuition, or something far more extraordinary? He decided to test it carefully. He took a small holographic projection of the ship's cargo bay and moved it around the room. Kale's eyes followed, blinking at points that no human mind could anticipate. "They know," Kale murmured, barely a whisper. "They always know." It was then that Elias realized the scope of what they had found. This child was not just human. It was a bridge between human resilience and something the aliens had engineered, or at least observed. Kale's intelligence and reflexes suggested a blueprint that defied human evolution, as if the aliens had designed this life form to survive the harshest conditions, to think, react, and perhaps challenge them. As weeks turned into months, Kale's growth accelerated beyond comprehension. By 6 months, the child could speak in full sentences, articulate thoughts with clarity, and even exhibit problem-solving skills comparable to adults. Yet, despite its intellect, Kale's emotional development remained deeply human. It formed attachments, displayed empathy, and clung fiercely to Elias, whom it continued to call Daddy in the quiet, unwavering certainty of love. The station's crew grew protective of Kale, sensing its unique significance. Some worried about the implications. Was this child a miracle or a warning? Dr. Harkin argued for secrecy, fearing that news of Kale's abilities might draw attention from entities beyond human comprehension. Elias, however, felt something stronger, destiny. "This child was left to die," he said one night, staring at the small figure perched on his shoulder. "They wanted us to fail, and yet here you are. Alive. Strong. Unstoppable. You're proof that humans can survive anything." Kale's eyes sparkled with understanding. "Survive? Daddy," it said. Then, more softly, almost to itself, "Fight back." Elias's heart tightened. These words, barely audible, carried a weight far beyond their simplicity. The aliens had underestimated humanity. They had left Kale to die, expecting failure, expecting weakness. Instead, they had created a witness to human tenacity, a being that would prove, in the most profound way possible, that humans are not merely survivors, they are exceptional. The first external threat came unexpectedly. A small reconnaissance vessel, alien in design but clearly sentient, appeared on the station's sensors. Its hull bore the same markings as the derelict ship, proof that whoever had left Kale behind had not abandoned interest. Elias knew that confrontation was inevitable. Kale, however, did not display fear. The child observed the approaching vessel with quiet calculation, eyes reflecting the stars and the approaching threat. "They come," Kale said, voice calm, almost commanding. "We ready." Elias realized then that Kale was not just human, nor entirely alien. It was the first of a new understanding, a synthesis of survival, intellect, and instinct. The aliens had left it to die, but in doing so, they had underestimated the very essence of humanity. The refusal to surrender, the capacity for love, and the unyielding drive to endure. As the vessel drew nearer, the station braced for contact. The crew prepared defenses, but Elias knew the real strength lay not in technology, but in the small, indomitable life before him. Kale's presence alone was a message to the cosmos. Humans are resilient, adaptive, and unbroken. And in the quiet hum of the medical bay, As Cale gazed at him with a depth of understanding far beyond its years, Elias realized that the child they had found abandoned in a sack was no ordinary human. It was a testament to survival, a challenge to the universe itself, and the living proof that no matter how dark the void, humanity would endure and fight. For Cale, the battle was only beginning. But already it was clear, the aliens had made a mistake. They had left a child to die. And instead of succumbing, it had awakened. Humanity, it seemed, could never be underestimated. The station shuddered as the alien vessel edged into orbit, its dark hull reflecting the faint light of the nearby star. Alerts screamed through the corridors, but Elias Arden barely noticed the chaos around him. His eyes were fixed on Cale, perched on the edge of the command console, small yet unnervingly calm. The child's gaze was unflinching, intelligent, and unsettlingly knowing, as though the alien ship's approach was nothing more than a routine event in Cale's mind. The crew scrambled, activating defensive arrays, energy shields, and automated turrets. Yet Elias sensed that technology alone could not contain the storm about to descend. Cale, sensing his tension, reached out and took his hand. The grip was firm, almost commanding. "They watch us," Cale whispered, voice steady despite the alarms. "We're ready. Daddy, trust." Elias swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing on him like gravity. "I trust you, Cale," he said. "More than anything." A communication beacon flickered, then activated. On the main screen, a translucent alien figure emerged, humanoid in shape but impossibly thin, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes. Its voice was a low hum that reverberated directly in the mind, bypassing human ears. "You took what was ours," the entity said. "The child. Return it or face eradication." Cale's eyes narrowed. "Yours? Daddy, we belong here. You left me to die." The alien recoiled slightly, as if struck by the audacity of the child's words. Elias felt a ripple of shock pass through the crew. Cale, barely 6 months old in human terms, spoke with the authority of a seasoned commander. "We left you to test," the alien said. "To see if the weak could survive. You survived. Unexpected. Unacceptable." Cale's small hands glowed faintly as a bioelectric energy radiated from its body. It was subtle, but the effect was undeniable. The alien's holographic form flickered, disrupted by the sheer force of Cale's presence. "Not weak," Cale said firmly. "Human. Strong. Fight." Elias realized, with a mix of awe and fear, that Cale was not merely resisting. They were projecting something deeper, a psychic resonance that the aliens had not anticipated. The child was more than human now. It was an apex of survival, embodying everything the aliens had hoped would fail. Without warning, the alien vessel launched a probe, sleek and black, heading directly for the station. The crew braced, ready to intercept, but Cale's hand shot out. The probe froze mid-flight, hovering in defiance of physics itself. Elias could hardly believe his eyes. The probe spun in midair, suspended by the child's will. Cale's voice, now louder, filled the bridge, echoing in tones that vibrated through metal and bone alike. "Stop. Leave." The probe shuddered, then drifted harmlessly aside, as though repelled by an invisible force. The crew gasped, watching a child bend reality with sheer determination. "Impossible," Dr. Harkin muttered. "No human, or known life form, should be able to do that." Cale turned to Elias, eyes wide with expectation. "We fight together. We win. Humans never die." Elias swallowed hard, heart pounding. He had faced countless battles, encountered civilizations far older and deadlier than humans, yet nothing compared to this. This tiny human, abandoned, left to die, was more than a soldier. Cale was a force of nature. The alien ship fired next, releasing a series of energy pulses designed to disable the station. Shields flared, taking some of the impact, but Cale's influence extended beyond the immediate vicinity. The pulses slowed as they neared the bridge, energy dissipating unnaturally. One by one, the attacks fizzled before even reaching their targets. "Daddy feel?" Cale asked, tilting its head. "We stronger." Elias gritted his teeth, pride swelling alongside adrenaline. "I feel it, Cale. We're stronger together." The alien, realizing its attacks were ineffective, attempted a different approach, communication through psychological manipulation. The vessel projected images into the station, visions of desolation, lifeless planets, and humans kneeling in surrender. The crew recoiled, but Cale's gaze never wavered. "Scary," Cale said matter-of-factly. "Humans brave. Humans fight." Then something extraordinary happened. Kale's energy expanded, subtle at first, then immense, enveloping the command bridge. Screens flickered, lights pulsed, and the air itself seemed charged with raw potential. The alien vessel shuddered, as if the universe itself had taken sides. "Leave," Kale commanded, voice echoing with a resonance that transcended language. "No weak. Only human strong." The alien ship hesitated, the glowing eyes of its commander flickering. For the first time, it appeared uncertain, even fearful. Kale's gaze, so small yet so unyielding, radiated something primal: survival, love, defiance. Elias realized the truth in that moment. Kale had not just survived. Kale had evolved into a symbol of humanity's greatest strength: the refusal to die, to yield, or to submit. This child, left to perish, was now humanity's shield and spear, a living testament to everything the aliens had underestimated. The alien commander hesitated, then slowly withdrew. The vessel backed into orbit, then accelerated into the void, leaving the station unscathed. The crew erupted in relief and awe. Shields flickered back to normal, alarms ceased, and the hum of the station returned to its usual rhythm. Kale, small yet unshakable, climbed into Elias's arms. "Safe," it said simply, eyes reflecting the fading threat. Elias held the child close, feeling the unbreakable bond forged in fire and survival. "Yes, Kale. Safe. But this was only the beginning." Kale nodded, almost solemnly. "Next, fight bigger. We ready." That night, the station was quiet, but the crew could not forget what they had witnessed. A child had faced an alien threat, bent reality with sheer will, and emerged victorious. Humanity, it seemed, was no longer just a species. It was a force that could not be predicted, measured, or controlled. In the quiet hours, Elias stood by the viewport with Kale in his arms. The stars stretched endlessly before them, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe, and the innumerable threats lurking in its depths. And yet, he felt no fear. "They underestimated us," he whispered to Kale. "They thought you would die. They thought we would fail. But they were wrong. We are human." Kale's small hand touched his cheek. "Human strong," it said. And in that simple, powerful truth, Elias felt hope like never before. For the first time, the stars did not feel lonely. Humanity had a champion, left to die but destined to rise. Kale was the proof, the declaration, and the beginning of a new chapter for humans in the cosmos. And the universe, for all its vast threats, would soon learn that a species forged in adversity could never be defeated. The first encounter was over, but the war for respect, survival, and recognition was only beginning. And humanity, guided by Kale, would rise to meet it, undaunted, unbroken, and stronger than ever. The aftermath of the alien retreat left the station in a fragile calm. Systems hummed back to life, and crew members moved cautiously, their faces pale from the shock and awe of what they had just witnessed. Yet amidst the relief, Elias couldn't shake a gnawing unease. Kale had protected them, yes, but the alien ship had not fled in defeat. It had withdrawn, reassessing, and somewhere in the void, it was plotting its return. Kale sat in Elias's arms, eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the stars. The child's small fingers twitched, almost as if sensing currents invisible to human perception. Elias traced a finger over the tiny hand, a mix of pride and worry settling deep in his chest. "You understand them, don't you?" he asked quietly. "You know what they're thinking." Kale's voice was faint, yet resolute. "They test again. Strong, humans survive." The station commander, Dr. Harkin, entered the room, his usual calm replaced by tension. "Elias, we need to talk strategy. That was no random encounter. That alien race, they've likely cataloged our weaknesses, our numbers, everything about us. If they attack again—" His voice trailed off, the implication hanging like a shadow over the bridge. Kale's small hand clenched around Elias's finger. "We ready. We fight." Elias nodded. The truth was undeniable. The child wasn't just human. They were a force multiplier, a symbol of defiance. Humanity's survival no longer depended solely on technology or numbers. It depended on Kale. The next morning, the crew convened in the strategy room. The holographic table projected the alien ship's trajectory and potential approach vectors. Tactical officers debated endlessly: defensive maneuvers, energy dispersals, counterattacks. Yet all of their plans felt inadequate next to the reality of Kale's abilities. The child had deflected energy pulses, disrupted advanced alien technology, and asserted a psychic authority that none of the officers fully understood. Elias placed Kale on the table, letting the child crawl to the center. The room fell silent. Kale's presence was commanding, almost magnetic. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Kale pointed at the holographic alien ship. The projection rippled under the touch, faltering. "We strong," Kale said. "Attack, there's turn." "What do you mean?" Dr. Harkin asked cautiously. Kale's eyes gleamed with understanding far beyond human years. "We use mind. Confuse, make weak." Elias felt a shiver of realization. The child wasn't just defending, they were preparing to strike, to manipulate the battlefield itself. Humans had underestimated the raw adaptability of their species, and Kale embodied that potential. For days, the station prepared. Shields were reinforced, weapon systems recalibrated, and every crew member drilled for combat. Yet Elias knew the real advantage wasn't in the tech, it was in Kale. The child's presence alone could sway outcomes, destabilize enemies, and inspire the human crew to acts of unprecedented bravery. When the alien fleet finally returned, the station was ready, but the confrontation unfolded in a way no human could have anticipated. The ships approached in tight formations, energy fields humming with destructive intent. The aliens projected their presence psychically, attempting to dominate the human minds and sow terror. Kale stepped forward, tiny fingers raised, small voice echoing, resonating through the station, then the void itself. "No fear, humans strong." The effect was immediate. Alien mental probes faltered, their psychic grip loosening. Crew members felt an overwhelming sense of confidence, courage blooming in their hearts. Elias felt it too. Kale's will radiated, a tangible force that bolstered every human nerve and muscle. Then the fight truly began. Kale's energy radiated outward, touching the hulls of the alien vessels. Lights flickered, systems malfunctioned, and weapons fired off course. Aliens, who had once believed themselves invincible, now struggled to maintain formation. The station's defenses, previously strained to their limits, now synchronized seamlessly with Kale's influence, each human action amplified, precise, and devastating. Elias led the crew in coordinated attacks, but it was Kale who dictated the battlefield. "Left stronger. Push their shields." The child's commands were simple, yet impossibly effective, as if the universe itself bent to obey. Ships exploded in brilliant arcs of plasma, the vacuum of space lighting with the detonation of alien hulls. Yet amidst the chaos, Kale's expression remained calm, focused. There was no joy in the destruction, only purpose. The aliens, realizing their usual strategies failed, attempted to isolate Kale. A fast-moving strike team breached the station, aiming directly for the child. Yet Kale reacted instantly. Energy flared, repelling the intruders before they could reach the bridge. One by one, the attackers were subdued, their technology rendered inert. Elias watched, astonished. A child, abandoned to die, was now humanity's shield, their spear, their guiding force. Every instinct told him to protect Kale, yet it became increasingly clear that Kale needed no protection. The aliens underestimated the depth of human resilience and ingenuity, embodied in a single, extraordinary child. Hours passed. The battle raged relentlessly, yet Kale's presence never wavered. The alien fleet, unable to counteract the psychic and strategic advantage, began retreating, broken and confused. Ships scattered, fleeing into the blackness of space. Humanity had not only survived, they had prevailed. When the last vessel vanished from sensors, silence fell over the station. The crew, exhausted and exhilarated, turned to Kale. Small hands reached up to Elias, and the child's voice, soft and clear, said, "We win. Humans strong." Elias held Kale close, tears blurring his vision. "Yes, Kale. You've shown them. Humanity is not weak. We never were." Dr. Harkin stepped forward, awe etched on his face. "That was beyond anything I could have imagined. Kale, you've not only saved this station, you've changed the course of human history." Kale tilted their head, as though processing the enormity of the statement. "History, humans survive. Always survive. Never die." The crew cheered, a sound filled with triumph and relief. Yet Elias knew this was more than celebration, it was recognition. Humanity had been tested, abandoned, and underestimated. And through the innocence of a child left to die, they had discovered a truth. The strength of humans lay not in numbers, technology, or strategy alone, but in their will, adaptability, and capacity to rise against impossible odds. As the station repaired and systems recalibrated, Elias looked out the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly, a canvas of infinite possibilities. Somewhere, other civilizations watched, perhaps reconsidering the underestimated species that had just triumphed. Kale nestled in Elias's arms, eyes scanning the cosmos. "Next challenge," they whispered. Elias smiled, feeling hope and resolve swell in his chest. "We'll face it together. Always." The first true victory had been won, but the universe was vast and full of threats. Yet now, humanity had a champion, a beacon of strength that no enemy could ignore. The child who had been left to die had instead awakened humanity's potential, revealing the extraordinary truth that in the face of annihilation, humans did not falter. They evolved, adapted, and prevailed. And somewhere, in the silent darkness of space, whispers of a human force unlike any other began to spread. A species abandoned, underestimated, yet unyielding. A species that would no longer be ignored. Kale, small yet mighty, lay in Elias's arms, a living testament to survival and defiance. Humanity, through them, had found its voice, and it would be heard across the stars. The station floated in the silent aftermath of battle, its hull scarred but intact, the stars outside glittering indifferently at the chaos that had just unfolded. Crew members moved cautiously through the corridors, their faces pale yet bright with the adrenaline of survival. Debriefings had begun, but for Elias, the focus was singular: Kale. The child, once left to die in a sack, now sat upright on the observation deck, legs dangling over the edge of the platform, as though the cosmos itself were a playground. Small hands hovered over the glowing panels, instinctively touching controls and systems, though not to operate them. Kale was already aware that the real machinery was not metal or circuits, but the human will itself. "Elias," Dr. Harkin said softly, stepping beside him. "The data, the readings from the battle. This isn't just a tactical advantage. Kale's presence affects reality itself. Our shields, our weapons, even our coordination improved exponentially. It's as if humanity itself is evolving." Elias looked at Kale, who had tilted their head at the comment. "Evolve, yes," the child whispered, voice small yet firm. "Humans never weak." It was astonishing. In every story humans had told themselves for millennia, they had been clever, adaptive, resilient. But this was beyond comprehension. Kale's power was not simply psychic. It was a manifestation of human potential, amplified, focused, unstoppable. Humanity, through Kale, had become more than itself. The debriefing room had quickly transformed into a council chamber. The surviving officers, pilots, engineers, and scientists assembled, the weight of recent events heavy on their shoulders. Plans were no longer about defense, they were about opportunity. Humanity had survived the first true interstellar test, and Kale's presence meant they were no longer alone in their strategy. They could be proactive, dominant, and unshakably united. Kale, sensing the shift in focus, crawled to the center of the room. Tiny fingers hovered over a holographic map of nearby star systems. "Targets, weak, prepare." "Not attack," Elias cautioned. "We need observation. First, understand them. We strike only if necessary. You've already proven humans are strong. Let's not provoke unnecessarily." The child's eyes narrowed, a spark of understanding passing across their features. Protect humans. Decide right. It was the essence of humanity distilled in one being. Curiosity, caution, morality, and strength all intertwined. Kale represented what humans had always been capable of, but had never fully realized until now. Days turned into weeks. Humanity began sending scouts to nearby systems, learning, observing, and establishing contact with other species. Each mission was guided, subtly, by Kale. Humans were no longer simply explorers. They were a force that could think faster, react more precisely, and adapt more dynamically than any known civilization. Kale's influence was tangible, yet invisible, a silent mentor guiding every decision. The news from Earth and other colonies filtered in. People celebrated survival, resilience, and the first taste of true interstellar recognition. Yet the military and political leaders understood something deeper. The human species had unlocked a latent potential, a defining edge that no alien intelligence had anticipated. Elias watched Kale one evening as the child stood at the observation deck, gazing at the swirling nebulae. "Do you understand?" he asked softly. "Do you know what you've done for humans?" Kale's voice was quiet, almost shy. "Protect, not just humans. Show humans strong." "Yes," Elias said, swallowing the lump in his throat. "You've shown them all. You've given us something no one can take away. Hope, courage, belief. Humanity has always survived because we refused to die quietly. And now, thanks to you, we've proven it to the stars." The calm was broken suddenly. Sensors flared. An unknown vessel entered the sector, its design unfamiliar and terrifying. The crew braced, weapons systems activating automatically. But Kale, small yet resolute, simply raised a hand. The reading stabilized. The ship, enormous and alien, didn't attack, it paused, observing. "They curious," Kale murmured. "See humans different." Elias felt the weight of those words. This wasn't a threat. It was recognition. Kale's actions had reshaped perceptions across the galaxy. Aliens who had underestimated humanity now saw them as a species that could not be ignored. Not through sheer numbers or technology, but through resilience, adaptability, and the extraordinary courage of a child who had been left to die. The encounter passed without conflict. The alien vessel departed, leaving a faint trail of energy that sensors registered as a signal. A greeting, perhaps, or an acknowledgement. It was humanity's first diplomatic success born of strength, and it owed everything to Kale. Months later, Earth convened a summit of interstellar observers. Humans arrived not as prey or weaklings, but as equals, or at least as species to be respected. Kale, carried in Elias's arms, was the centerpiece. Scientists, diplomats, and alien envoys alike studied the child, marveling at the embodiment of potential that humanity had unveiled. "What do we call this?" an alien diplomat asked, their voice modulated through translators. "This evolution?" Elias smiled. "No, it's humanity. The same species you underestimated, the same species you thought you could test and discard. Strong, adaptable, and never to be ignored." Kale, small and perceptive, tilted their head and whispered, "Humans special." Indeed, humans had been special all along. The trials, the abandonments, the threats, they had not broken them. They had strengthened them. And now, with Kale as both symbol and guide, humanity had stepped fully onto the galactic stage. Years passed. Kale grew, nurtured not only by Elias but by the collective hope and determination of all humans. They became a figure of legend, not a weapon, but a teacher, a guardian, and a living testament to what the species could achieve when its courage was awakened. Humanity continued to explore, to learn, to confront threats with confidence they had never possessed before. And yet, Kale never forgot the beginnings, the sack abandoned on a lifeless planet, the fragile hope that whispered "Daddy" in the darkness. That memory fueled every action, every choice, every lesson imparted to humans and allies alike. In the quiet moments, Elias would watch Kale, now older and wiser, staring at the stars. "Do you think they'll ever understand what humans can do?" he asked. Kale's smile was calm, assured. "They know. Never forget. Humans survive. Humans win." Elias laughed softly, tears filling his eyes. "Yes, humanity survives. And now we will thrive." The final truth had been written, not in treaties or monuments, but in the lived experience of a species that refused to perish quietly. The universe, vast and indifferent, had tested humanity, but in the end, humans had proven something fundamental. They were a force of life, ingenuity, and resilience unmatched by any adversary. And in that force, small and fragile, yet infinitely powerful, lay Kale, a reminder that even in the face of death, even when abandoned, humanity would rise. The child who had been left to die had become the herald of human ascension, a living proof that being underestimated was not a weakness. It was an invitation to exceed all expectations. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, and humanity, through Kale, faced them without fear. The universe had its challenges, its threats, and its unknowns, but humans had something stronger than technology, weapons, or numbers. They had heart, will, and the courage to survive against all odds. And with Kale guiding the way, humanity would not merely survive. They would shine. The echoes of that first whisper, "Daddy," had transformed into a declaration to the cosmos. Humans endure, humans prevail, humans are special. The legacy of the child left to die would forever be the story of a species that refused to be broken, that adapted, that triumphed. Humanity had finally claimed its place among the stars.